Hey, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So glad you guys are joining us for the DFW, for the Hispanic Communicators DFW mentorship program here on Zoom. I'm Kristin Diaz, the News Radio 1080 KRLD, and this is our kickoff event. For those of you guys who are joining tonight or you're watching this right now, I just want to say thank you so much. This is going to be a great opportunity moving forward to connect you with different Latinos in media. We kind of like to just say, when you're a kid, they tell you you got to be a lawyer, you got to be a doctor. Or if you're interested in media, maybe it's because you saw an anchor, you want to be an anchor, you want to be a reporter, but there's so much more to media. And Latinos are starting to fill more spaces in this industry. And so we're going to be connecting you with some amazing people that are right here in the DFW or have ties to the DFW so that you can kind of have the ice broken a bit. That intimidation can kind of go away when you're looking for a mentor, looking for someone to chat with about maybe something you're interested in and a career path that you would like to speak with them about, or perhaps they share a similar experience of growing up and getting into this industry. So continue to join us for our future Zoom mentorship series. Again, this is going to be once a month on the last Tuesday of the month, right at 8:15, just like today. And you can subscribe and follow us on our website. Again, this is going to be HCDFW.org. You can find the events page on our homepage, and you can continue to follow along and subscribe as well. So without further ado, we have Narda Pérez helping us kick off our series. And she has a very unique position. Now that you are an audience engagement journalist and you are based right here in the DFW, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and can't wait to hear your story and share with everyone who's watching this evening or whatever time they're watching this now on YouTube. Narda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Kristin. I'm so excited to get to talk to you tonight. And yeah, like you said, I'm my official title, I guess, Senior Audience Engagement Editor at Slate Magazine, which is an online publication. I'm based in Dallas, although Slate is based in New York. And what I handle is kind of like a variety of things across the newsroom. I'm not necessarily your traditional like reporter or writer or editor, but I handle a lot of the digital side of things. So I handle a lot of all of our social media accounts with the rest of the audience team. And that's really just one sliver of it. I think it's a big misconception maybe that audience journalists only tweet, right, or only post to Instagram. Well, that is definitely a part of it. It's not all of it. We handle everything from SEO to make sure that these wonderful stories that the newsroom is producing get ranked in Google and that readers are able to find them when they search a certain keyword. We handle everything on the analytics side to make sure we know that we're meeting our audience's needs and that we're reaching newer audiences. So that's kind of a little bit of a snippet of what I do right now at Slate.
That is so cool. And for anyone who's not familiar with Slate, can you explain what type of publication that is?
Absolutely. So Slate is really known for being like an OG magazine, but online. They've been very active across the web, obviously, since the 90s. And so we publish a lot of stories, a lot of commentary, a lot of social commentary on anything from politics to pop culture to business and technology, really a really wide breadth of topics, but with like our Slatey take is what we like to say. So it's not necessarily like Associated Press or CNN or whatnot. It's definitely a lot more vibey, a lot more voicey. So that's a little bit of what you could find on
I
Slate. And
literally
again,
saw I was just say I literally saw that word "voicey" in a job description recently for a reporter position, that the way that you write, they want you to write
yeah,
like you talk, right? Not
absolutely.
write in AP style or like it's very old school versus new school, right? And it's interesting that you say
Absolutely.
it's from the 90s and that it was like a magazine and whatnot, because a lot of these students that are probably watching this were like, when did I ever buy a magazine? You know what I mean? I think millennials were probably the last generation to
Right.
truly be into the magazine era. But that is very cool. And especially to see this online, they have seen such an evolution of what the internet is and how people are consuming news online. And that's got to be really interesting to work for a company in that capacity.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it perfectly. Just how, Slate specific. I mean, I've only been there since this year, so not me personally, but Slate specifically has grown so much. And obviously, like many other news organizations, has transitioned over the years on how they're producing the news, right? How they're delivering the news to people, how we're learning about reader habits. Of course, with the internet, obviously, it has changed drastically. And so that's kind of where I come into play, right? Is the sphere of audience engagement is just that. How do we engage our audience, right? How do we engage our current audience, and how do we grow our audience? How do we reach a new audience? And it all, we'll go into it a bit later, but it all really depends on each newsroom's goals and what they define is audience engagement.
Absolutely. And as this Zoom call is open, we may have some people who continue to join us throughout this conversation. And we just encourage everyone to send us your questions in the chat. We will have an AMA at the end with Narda, and she'll be able to address all of the questions that you might have, whether it be regarding her line of business or how she got into this whole industry. And hopefully we get to learn a little bit more from you on that front as well. Narda, I'm curious, you're a UTA grad. You still reside here in Dallas, even though you're working for a publication based out of New York. So, hello, remote, working from home or from wherever. That is so cool. Tell us a little bit about, what your aspirations were getting into media and kind of your pathway to like where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a journey, even though I am young and 26, it has been a journey. I started at UTA when I was 18, right out of high school, and I really wanted to be a traditional, like, print journalist or a TV reporter. Like, there was no in between. Like, that's what I wanted. And I came up at the Shorthorn, which was UT Arlington student newspaper. And so there is where I learned like my chops, right? Like that's where I learned how to write and interviews and like learn my interview skills. And I became an editor, and I just really grew a bunch at the student newspaper. And so I really was passionate about crime and politics, and my internships were crime reporting internships and writing internships. And so that's what I wanted to do, was be a reporter at like a legacy paper, and especially local news is something I'm still very much passionate about. On the other hand, my actual degree was in broadcast. So I was shooting TV segments, and I was shooting TV packages, and I was anchoring and this and that and producing. And I really liked the technical aspect of that. So eventually, a couple years in, I was like, being on camera is maybe not for me exactly, but this is really fun. Um, so once I graduated, my first internship, which eventually turned into my first full-time job, was on the audience team at the Dallas Morning News, which is crazy because at that time I didn't think I wanted to be like an audience engagement journalist necessarily. I
Did you
still
even
very
know what that
much
was at the time? Or you kind of were just like, I'll get a job. I need a job. As a lot of
I
us
did
are when we get out of college.
I know, no. I did know what it was because the last internship I had before graduating was an audience internship. And so that's kind of where I was introduced to this segment of journalism. And I fell in love with it. I did. I thought it was really fun. I said, look, at least I'm spending my summer in the air conditioning, and I'm not out at the crime scenes in Austin, Texas in the middle of summer, you know? So I was very like, okay, I can give this a try. Like, let me learn. It was fun. It was very much um, like a place in the newsroom where I could be creative, which wasn't necessarily something I had the freedom to do, right? If I'm writing like about murders and traffic stops, right? So it was that last internship I had in college was where I discovered audience engagement and decided to give it a try. So when the opportunity came up with the Dallas Morning News, I was like, okay, well, it can't hurt. Like, I'll just
For
keep
sure.
my skills and in this, segment of journalism that I wasn't familiar with before. And here I am still. So
I've
it's
always
been
It's
Go
been,
ahead.
I'm always so fascinated with, I think, I have mad respect for true print journalism, whether it's newspaper writing, magazine writing, because writing is such a skill.
Yeah.
It's such a robust skill because of the fact that you had experience in TV. TV writing is not the same as
Yeah.
writing. Magazine writing is not the same as newspaper writing. And then each newspaper, they're historic, they have such tradition, and they have each paper is different. It has its own personality based off off of its town, and
Yeah.
and who's reading their papers, and how they've established themselves from way back when. So I think there's just a lot of prestige behind it. And I always wondered, is that difficult for someone like you who is so young, evolving, trying to learn the tricks of the trade? Like, you have to kind of know how to adapt, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point, and I absolutely share the same sentiment. Like, I'm constantly feel very torn by the fact that I did, I guess, leave a local newspaper specifically so early in my career because I absolutely loved it. Like, I had the time of my life at the Dallas Morning News, honestly, and every single person in that newsroom like molded me and shaped me into who I am now. So I'm forever grateful. And I just, you said, like, there's something about like a legacy print organization that is just, it doesn't compare to another like news outlet.
Totally.
So yeah, it's, I'm very grateful though that I got that experience while also still like growing my skills and trying something new and kind of being a part of this newer era of journalism, with other journalists that are also in audience engagement. So it's definitely like 50-50 for me depending on the day. Like, I wish I could stay at like a local like print paper for the rest of my life, but obviously with how this industry is, I just didn't see it feasible. And so I think audience engagement has truly like helped open up so many opportunities and doors for me.
Before we
Would
get
have never
into,
thought of.
I'm sorry, you broke out. So continue your thought.
Sorry, I was just saying that like audience engagement is just something that gave me the opportunity to explore a part of the industry that I would have never thought I'd be a part of, back even in my early years of college. Like, I never thought I would be doing something called audience engagement. So
Yeah, I mean, because it's not that traditional cookie cutter route that we tend to
exactly.
know. And growing up, I love that. And I want you to get more into depth with, teaching all who are watching right now a little bit about that avenue. But first, before we get there and we get to the nitty gritty about the actual job and what it all entails and the responsibilities, I want to get to know Narda a little bit because, you are a young Latina. You're a part of the Hispanic Communicators DFW. You not only have a rocking job, you have just such great experience. I mean, girl, to say a Latina is out there doing her job, she's got Dallas Morning News, she's got New York Times, now she's got Slate on her resume. That's some heavy punches right there that you're bringing to the table, and that's awesome. We applaud you, we're excited for you, and we want to see you continue to grow. How can someone who's watching right now, who aspires to be in the field that you're in right now, how do you, share with them, or what can you share with them as far as your personal journey and your story of, where you come from? Where do you come from? What
Yeah.
was home like for you?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I grew up in a small town you may know of, Arlington, Texas. And I grew up with my mom, who was a single mother most of my life, and my twin brother, Diego. And my mom actually, emigrated here from Mexico in the early 2000s. And in Mexico, like, she went to college, she had her career, she was in accounting, like banking. And when she got to the States, she actually got an opportunity to work in journalism just
Wow.
out of nowhere. And so she actually worked at a few newspapers in Dallas, Hispanic newspapers in Dallas that I don't think exist anymore. And
Wow.
so I always grew up seeing her in a newsroom and seeing her work with journalists and photographers and designers. And I remember thinking, why would I ever do that to myself because I saw how hard she worked. Like I saw how like crazy it was during the week and long nights, and I was like, oh my God,
Sure.
I would never do this. Um, and so just as I got older, I started writing and I really found my love for writing in high school. And so it just kind of evolved into my mom being like, well, why don't you figure out if ETA has a student newspaper? Like I'm sure they do. Like it wouldn't hurt, right? And I was like, well, yeah, it wouldn't hurt, I guess. And I got sucked in and I never left. And
So it was in
so
your bones. It was in your genes.
it really was, as much as I wanted to deny it, I couldn't, obviously.
Yeah,
And so
I love
that's
that.
really where I guess got my intro to journalism. I was very young, and um, you know, I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had, the fact that I've had them honestly so early in my career is like insane to me. But it really did start like as soon as I started college. I had this
Yeah.
mindset of, okay, Narda, it's either sink or swim. Like if you're going to get ahead, if you're going to do these things. I was a very shy person growing up, a very anxious person. And I knew when I got to college, I was like, I can't be like that anymore. So I need to force myself in here. And so I did. And honestly, it's because of like Hispanic, like organizations like Hispanic Communicators, SPJ, all of these organizations and people that I met from these organizations that helped me get my start. You know how it goes. Like you talk to this person who knows this person who knows this person at the New York Times, and they're telling you that they're hiring a person for this team and this team. Like that's how it all starts. And so honestly, it's because of organizations like Hispanic Communicators that I've gotten the opportunities I have. We all know that in this industry, it's really about who you know and the connections you make and the meaningful connections that you make. And so I was really lucky to be exposed to Hispanic Communicators when I first got to college, and you know they helped me with scholarships and networking events. So that's really the biggest thing is like show up. Like if there's anything you do for yourself is to show up, and that means going to the networking event after class and rushing to downtown Dallas after working at the newspaper, right? And so those were the biggest things, and just putting in the work. Like it has not been easy, and it was not easy for me or my family. Like it's not easy like being a journalist for the people
No.
around you, you know?
Yeah.
So just showing up and putting in the work and just having pure intentions, I think. Like a big thing I preach, especially to young Latinas, is you don't have to put someone else down for you to move up. Like you can all move up together. And like that is something I am very like strong and committed about is like
Let's
if
say
we
it for
all
the
lift.
people in the back.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Because we all know them. We all know someone. So yeah, that's like the biggest thing. And like being able to
Absolutely.
accomplish something like that with other badass Latinas next to you, it's like empowering and it's strong. And that's why I'm so grateful for people like Magda and you. Like I know share the same sentiments. So that would be my
Absolutely. No, I love that. And there are going to be people who are going to be watching this and as they do, and as you all are right now, take that personally, from Nada, as she's saying, it's, we know the struggle. We know it's not easy. When you have pure intentions, it's pure energy, and that good energy will come back to you tenfold. And when you start connecting with like-minded people, hardworking people who want to see each other shine, that does go a long way. And you're also setting the example for other Latinos that come into your newsrooms, and so, all right, let's get to that now. That, when you started making your way, did you see a lot of other Latinos? You said you had your mom as an amazing, strong figure who was in media, a Latina, and in doing her thing. Were there other Latinos though that helped you along the way, or did you kind of feel like you were like, okay, well, I mean, this is it. This is my time to shine.
Yeah, I mean, definitely growing up, like as a young child, I had a very like almost like warped view of the world because I saw my mom in like a Spanish speaking newsroom. I was like, great, this probably means all journalists are Latino, right? Like this probably means most of Texas speaks Spanish. Like I was very lucky, honestly, to have that environment growing up. And it wasn't until obviously I got to middle school, high school, that I was like, wait a second, why doesn't this look like El Heraldo's newsroom right now? And so once I got to college, I made it a point to find my group, like find my people. I was very lucky that at the Shorthorn, which was my student newspaper, it was a very diverse makeup of reporters and editors and staff members. But was it like majority Latino? No. Were my classes majority Latino? No. But UTA has a really good like local NHJ chapter, and like UTA News en Español, which was spearheaded by Julian Rodriguez. I will say Julian was a big like part of my college career, and someone that always helped me and pushed me forward. And even though he knew I wasn't going to go into broadcast necessarily, like he was always a very strong proponent of my success. So that's what I had to do, is like find your niche, right? Like find your people. They're there, even if it's maybe not a lot of us, right? But like find them, and like they'll show up for you. And that's exactly what happens.
I love that. And okay, so let's talk about now the nitty and gritty. People want to know, what exactly is audience engagement, and how do I even find a job like that? Can you start breaking it down a little bit? I know you prepared some things for our audience members right
Yeah.
now so that they can visually kind of see everything they're talking about. And again, this is for us to break the ice, to say, hey, there's so many opportunities where we need Latino voices. It's not just in front of the camera, behind the mic. It's not, just directors, but we need salespeople. We need, GMs. We need, leaders. We need news directors and journalists from different communities and audience engagement members. How cool is this? So I'm going to let you take it away here. I know
All
you've
right.
got a couple of points, and I'll let you go through them.
All right. Let me share my screen. All right. Does that look okay to you?
Looks great.
Awesome. This is just an intro. We went over this already. What I will touch on is what I do in my role. I like to say is help the newsroom think of creative ways on how we package our content. Again, not just on social media, but we'll get into that. Audience engagement is actually something that there is not like a universal definition for. Again, because it's so new, and because audience engagement means something different for each newsroom or organization that you're working for. Harkin is an organization that publishes a lot of great research and statistics and data that I love to reference throughout the year. And this is what they said. They said engagement happens when members of the public are responsive to newsrooms, and newsrooms are in turn responsive to members of the public. So what I want everyone to know about audience engagement is that it's definitely a two-way street. That's why I'm saying you tweeting a story, not audience engagement. That's distribution, right? That's marketing, if you want to call it. Like that isn't engagement. A retweet it's engagement for the platform, but it's not necessarily audience engagement. And it's about relationship building. If your newsroom does not have a pathway to hear from the audience members they are supposed to be serving, that's not audience engagement. This is something else from Harkin, and it reads, if there's no pathway for input from your audience to shape the content decisions your newsroom is making, then it's not audience engagement. If you post a story to Facebook or Twitter, or whatever social media, thousands of comments, you could think, oh my gosh, this is getting thousands of comments. This is great, right? Because the algorithm, and it's boosting our post. If no one with authority from your newsroom is reading those comments, what's the point, right? If no one with authority, I'm talking a news editor that helps shape the content your newsroom produces, an editor-in-chief who decides what on the front page, whatnot. If no one with that power is looking at these comments, then you're not really using your audience's feedback to shape your coverage decisions, right? So if you have thousands of Latinos in your comments talking about how you didn't cover XYZ event from the weekend, how are you going to know to cover it next year? That's really what I want the key takeaway to be, is like, this is a feedback loop. And here it is. So this is also from Harkin, and they call it the audience engagement ring. It's a lot like your typical definition of an engagement ring, right? I'm engaged. And so what happens is you're making a commitment to someone, right? And that's exactly what a newsroom has to do if they're going to use the term audience engagement. And so here, as you can see on the engagement ring, is you start with the newsroom, where you invite feedback from the public. You want to know what your audience wants to read in the paper or on the website. You want to know the most important topics they're interested in, whether it's the economy, pop culture, technology, and you're inviting that feedback from the public. But then you have to close the loop and do something with that feedback. You want to say, you want to read about the economy? We started a pop-up newsletter about how we're going into a recession or whatnot. And that's what this is you want to make sure you go full circle and you close the loop. It's a feedback loop. If you're not already, your newsroom should be doing some sort of user research on your audience. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, if you're not doing these sorts of call outs, whether it's on social media, as simple as hey, respond to this tweet if you care about the Grammys this weekend or whatever. Like if you're not doing that already, you absolutely should be, because if you don't, you're kind of going in blind, and that's probably going to affect things like page views or subscriptions, if that's what you need to be sustainable as a newsroom. If you're not constantly asking for what your readers need or what they're interested in, there's no way for you to make informative coverage decisions. There's no way for you to know what's gonna stick. I also am not, gonna say that like you have to follow every single data point and every single page view and referral to the T, because you use your news judgment, right? And that's not necessarily always backed up by data, but the more data, the better. Excuse me. And so this is from another organization that I really like to reference throughout the year when it comes to audience engagement. It's from the Global Investigative Journalism Network. And so they say routinely seeking guidance of relevant audience members can help match user needs with products and features and avoid costly mistakes such as developing programs and products people don't want or misrepresenting community members in coverage. So what that means, like I mentioned earlier, launching a pop-up newsletter about the economy. If your audience didn't say anything about the economy, then maybe you shouldn't allocate all of your resources into creating a newsletter template and finding a writer and finding a designer, because that's not what your audience wants or needs, right? So making sure that you're asking those questions to your audience, whether it's in the form of a survey, in the form of a newsletter, in the form of a tweet, just putting up a poll or something, you're not going to get that direction that you're going to need as a newsroom. And especially right now, obviously, we know that newsrooms aren't the most bountiful in terms of money. So these are things that could really like make or break a newsroom success. And so another thing that I wanted to point out was that while I mentioned earlier that maybe tweeting out a story or posting a story to Instagram promoting, an investigation or whatever isn't necessarily engagement, it is something that plays a part, right? Because a big part of audience engagement is meeting your audience where they are. Everyone is on Instagram, everyone is on Twitter, everyone is on Facebook, everyone has an email. And so those are just kind of platforms and gateways to getting the information that your newsroom works so hard to gather and put together to your audience, right? But it has to be deeper than just a platform. It has to be deeper than just a tweet. Obviously, we know Twitter is going a little nuts right now, and who knows what it's going to be like in the next 6 months. And that's why you need to have this user research like solid and making sure that you're being consistent with it. However often your newsroom decides, 6 months, a year, whatever. So yeah, I believe that was my last slide. And I just kind of wanted to touch a little bit really quick about maybe how my role or how an audience engagement team differs from the rest of the newsroom. I know when we think journalist, we think TV reporter, radio reporter, print journalist. And so while I do not necessarily, write a story or write a 12-inch story or conduct interviews on the daily basis, audience journalists are journalists. And a lot of times audience teams, depending on, most of the news organizations you're familiar with, they are trained in whether it's traditional print media or TV
Mm.
media. And so they are still journalists, just with now like a different set of like sub skills, right? And so that's something that I definitely want to pinpoint is like your audience team is not just this like machine that tweets out stories. Like they are journalists and they were trained just like the other journalists in your newsroom.
I love that. That is so fascinating, and it's so key, not just to newsrooms, but any business right now, because every
Yeah.
digital touches everyone and everything in our world now. And so this is just so fascinating to me. And I'm curious what you feel your power as a Latina. What type of perspective can you bring to the table for this type of position? And why is it important to keep newsrooms diverse, in your opinion, through your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that I'm really lucky right now to be working at an organization that values diversity and inclusion as much as it does and is very, sensitive to the kinds of topics we cover and even just how it affects, the very people in our newsroom. But I think as a Latina, you bring this certain knowledge and experience and perspective that unfortunately is not that widespread among leadership in a lot of these journalism institutions and like legacy institutions. And so, especially, in the last, God, 8 years now or so, where topics like immigration have been, very heated and very amplified because of the previous administrations. It's important to be the one to be like, hey, that like you can't just call someone an illegal alien, like that maybe that's not necessarily exactly how we should be crafting this headline or crafting this Instagram post. Or as a
Absolutely.
woman, like, hey, it's important not to like necessarily, I don't know, victimize someone of crime or make
Sure, that
assumptions
perspective.
about exactly. And so, and that's true for all sorts of ethnicities and backgrounds, whether it's religious or
Absolutely.
gender based. So I obviously now we're seeing a lot more representation, in my opinion, across newsroom, which is super encouraging and amazing. I mean, just compared to when my mom was working in journalism in the 2000s, but obviously we still have a lot of work to do. And so
Absolutely.
again, it's kind of like you mentioned earlier. It's important to be like, hey, girlfriend, like I have a job opening up, like you guys should apply even if you think you're not qualified, or like, hey, like you don't think you're good enough, you should apply anyway, because I promise you the white man who isn't good enough is also going to apply. It's important to amplify and just push each other to go for these jobs because we are the ones that are going to be creating change and we're the ones that are actively creating change.
Absolutely. And there are so many Latinos that are part of that audience you're trying to engage. So, and
Exactly,
you're that gateway
exactly,
to, like you said, to the power positions, right? That can make a decision on that content. So,
exactly.
kudos to you, and round of applause for your hard work, and thank you for representing us in your newsroom and the future newsrooms you're going to be walking into. We are very excited for everything that comes your way, and all the trailblazing you've already done for young Latinos in the spaces that you've already been through. So we appreciate your time here today. We do want to do an AMA. We've got a couple of questions for you. So I want to make sure we get to that before we let you go. Let's see. The first question is, what kind of SEO experience do you need to start as an audience engagement professional?
That's a great question. I personally would say you don't need a ton. You don't need to know everything to kind of break into audience engagement. I especially didn't when I graduated college and when I started working at the audience team at the Dallas Morning News. SEO is something uh, kind of like the term audience engagement that has a lot of like shadows and a lot of secrets, and like Google doesn't necessarily want to tell us exactly what you need to do so that your story is at the very top of a search results page. So you don't need to know a ton. You just need to be willing to learn. And it's not, it's not like rocket science. We're not trying to launch a rocket or anything. So it's definitely, as long as you have this like soft skills and you want to work in digital, SEO is something. There are a ton of resources out there, including from the organizations that I mentioned earlier, like Harkit and the Global Investigative Journalism Network, that have like trainings and webinars, and there are certificates you can get online. So if you don't feel like you have all the knowledge about SEO, don't let that stop you. I am definitely not an SEO expert by any means, but I've learned a ton along the way at the jobs that I've had and the mentors that I've had.
Love it. All right. Our next question is, what are the newest or latest skills associated with audience engagement that will position someone ahead of others or position them for significant success?
That's a great question too. I would say if you have the opportunity, try to kind of dip your hand in a bunch of different little avenues within audience engagement. So, for example, at the Dallas Morning News, every single audience team member did a little bit of everything. We did newsletters, we did video, we did Instagram, we did Twitter. It was like all text, photo, video based, right? Whereas now my job is a little more niche, and I focus purely on social media. So I'm not necessarily doing a ton of like audio work or video work. We've just started, expanding onto TikTok. So I'm doing that a little bit more now. So I think as long as you if you get the opportunity to try these different platforms and try to experiment with how you package stories, that's going to do you a ton of good. Because if for whatever reason in the future I decide I really want to be specifically a newsletter strategist, like I'll have some experience to make me like a viable candidate for that role. Or if I want to one day be a TikTok strategist, like I could also do that because I've gotten experience in that. So I think being malleable, being not afraid to experiment and try new things, I think will do you a ton of good. I am by no means a video expert or an audio expert, but I'm producing talks somehow, and it's fun. It's fun to kind of like challenge myself and be like, oh, I did it. We just published this TikTok and I did it all by myself, even though I rarely worked with video. So I would say that is like, try it if you can, and if you get the opportunities to try different platforms and different avenues in audience engagement, absolutely do it, even if you're scared.
I love that. How about this one? We have a question about, can you share your thoughts on giving back and mentoring others at this stage in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I I love it. I was very, very fortunate to have as many amazing mentors as I did growing up through college, and even right now. Like I I consider myself still early career, because I really haven't I only graduated like 3 or 4 years ago. And I none of the jobs I've had, none of the people I've met, none of the awards, whatever, none of it would have been possible without the mentors and the people I met along the way. So now, even though I don't really consider myself this like hot shot or know it all by any means, like I want to help where I can. That's why I stay involved with Hispanic communicators. That's why I go back to my student newspaper every semester or so to talk to the student journalists that are coming up, because while it is very important to have the technical skills and be a good writer or be a good video producer, whatnot, it's also really important to show these students and young professionals coming up, like, hey, this is hard, and like it's okay if you feel like you're breaking, because we've all been there. Or like, hey, I know you got home really late, but still take your makeup off and shower and eat a good meal. Like, it's important to have those conversations and to make these students and young professionals feel like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like I'm not going insane. Like, this is hard for a lot of people and this is a hard industry. Like, I really enjoy that part of it more than anything. It's the personal connection and the empathy that we're able to show one another.
Love that. And it looks like our last audience question is, considering your current role, what's your next step in your career?
Oh my gosh, that is the question. I just started at Slate this year. Like I'm coming up, I think, on 7 months. And I'm really loving it. I love my job. Like I love what I get to do every day as an audience engagement journalist. You know, I have no idea on I don't have this like 10-year plan or 5-year plan by any means. But I hope that I am still able to do something in this capacity for the rest of my career. I really enjoy working in a newsroom. I enjoy collaborating with my teammates. I enjoy having the freedom to be creative and design some days and shoot some other days and be on camera another day. Like I really enjoy that part of my job. So I hope that I get to keep some version of this throughout the rest of my career because I really love it and I'm not sure that I see myself doing something different.
Well, last and not least, how can people continue to keep up with you? And for any of our audience members who watch this after the live, who want to get in contact with you, how can they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. All of my handles are at Narda L Perez. I'm sure, I think once we get this posted on social and YouTube, happy to link all of my socials and leave my email for anyone that wants to reach out. I am chronically online. So if you message me, DM me, FaceTime me, call me, I will answer. So yeah, happy to talk to whoever. And please do reach out if anyone has any questions about audience engagement, journalism, student journalism, whatnot. I'm always happy to chat.
Well, I'm definitely somebody who could chat with somebody for days. So there's so many other questions that I would continue to, but we do know that you have a lot to tend to. So thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule today to speak with us on Hispanic Communicators DFW Mentorship Series and helping us kick this off on during the month of July. We just again we thank you for all of your time sharing your experience and for those of you who are going to be getting in contact with her, thanks for the connections that you'll be building with these students and helping them with their careers. That little bit of time makes a huge difference, as you and I both have had similar experiences with others who have just taken a moment just to chat with us. So Narda Pérez, everyone here on Hispanic Communicators DFW Mentorship Program. Don't forget, you can subscribe and you can see all of our future Zoom calls here. You can join in live. The AMAs will be at the end. So, feel free to ask any questions if you want to get in contact with our mentors. So, you guys can have that in the future, that connection through Hispanic Communicators DFW. This is what it's all about. You don't have to be too shy to go up to somebody and if you don't know what to say, hopefully you've been able to pick and choose a couple of topics as they've been able to speak on this series. Again, I'm Kristin Diaz with News Radio 1080 KRLD. And thank you so much for the time. We'll see you guys next month.